Across the galaxy, there are few figures that embody the spirit of freedom, nor that of the rebellion quite like the daring pilots of the Starfighter Corps. Pilots who took on impossible odds, beset by extraordinary danger, and who stood defiant before the Empire. Yet, even amongst these brave souls, there were those that distinguished themselves as the best in the galaxy. The pilots of Rogue Squadron. Formed in the immediate aftermath of the Battle of Yavin, Rogue Squadron was an understrength unit, built from the surviving elements of Red Squadron, namely the newfound hero of the rebellion Luke Skywalker and Imperial defector Wedge Antilles. On paper, there was nothing to indicate that this newly organized squadron should have been anything special. Yet their skill and efficiency manifested quickly. Missions across the breadth of the galaxy, from Tatooine to Balmorra, Corellia to Kessel, proved beyond a doubt that the rogues were not only competent, but were among the best in the Alliance. They earned much of their renown from the cockpit of Incom's T-65 series X-Wing, but proved equally competent operating a variety of starfighters, bombers, and airspeeders in any number of combat environments, a feat that would prove relevant as Imperial forces descended upon Hoth. There, Rogue Squadron was again called to battle, some from the cockpits of T-47s engaging Imperial walkers across the frozen wastes, while others, vastly outgunned, broke the Imperial blockade, escorting Rebel transports as they fled the system. Losses were heavy, yet in their sacrifice the rebellion lived on. Not long after this engagement, Luke Skywalker would step away from the squadron, pursuing the Jedi arts. In his place, Wedge Antilles would assume command and see to restoring the squadron to a full operating capacity. Under Antilles' tutelage, rogues new and old were trained and tested in unique scenarios, together developing specialized tactics and working to be ready for any eventuality. Even so, they were taken aback by news of a second Death Star. Faced with a prospect, Rogue Squadron temporarily renamed Red Squadron in honor of those who had flown against the first Death Star. They were to spearhead the assault into the station's exposed superstructure. Things, however, did not go to plan. The rogues, along with the rest of the fleet that had been sent, found themselves in a desperate defense, caught between a vast Imperial fleet and a fully operational Death Star. There, the rogues fended off waves of Imperial fighters, only closing with the station when its shields were crippled, therein fighting a running battle into the station's exposed hull, flying amongst dense industrial piping, Imperial starfighters, and eventually successfully detonating the station's reactor core, escaping just ahead of the explosive detonation, the flames of which tinted their fighter craft. The destruction of this second Death Star brought great upheaval to the galaxy and many changes. The rebellion was reorganized into the New Republic, and Rogue Squadron was reinvented, with pressure from the new government pushing Antilles to accept politically appointed pilots who were to be drawn from across the galaxy, appointed to represent a system or species. Even so, Antilles' effectiveness as a leader ensured that the Rogues training program rapidly turned these newly inducted pilots into the best in the galaxy, building both their individual skill and developing their ability to coordinate as a unit, requiring of the Rogues that they fight, fly, and live together. Rogues new and old proved critical in the drive on Coruscant, establishing a foothold before infiltrating Coruscant itself, where the squadron brought down the world's mighty shields, allowing the great Ecumenopolis to fall with little bloodshed. In the immediate aftermath of the conquest, Rogue Squadron found itself entangled in conspiracy and conflict with Azan Izard, former director of the ISB and Imperial Warlord. The high point of such conflict came with the majority of Rogue Squadron resigning from the New Republic in order to hunt down Izzard on the neutral world of Thyphera. Unwilling to give up the propagandistic value of the squadron, the New Republic formed a new squadron that would, for a brief moment in time, bear the Rogue Squadron name. Yet, upon their victorious return to the Republic, the Rogues' actions were retroactively approved. Wedge stepped down as squadron leader, departing to form Wraith Squadron, with leadership of the Rogues passing to Tycho Selchu, who would oversee the squadron in their fight against Thrawn, against a clone of Izzard, and against a reborn Emperor, and the forces of his Dark Empire. By the end of these turbulent years, Rogue Squadron would find itself once more serving under Wedge Antilles, now a general and in command of the Super Star Destroyer Lusankya, where they were provided with numerous hangar bays and fighter craft, and a base from which they would operate for the remainder of the Galactic Civil War, as they hunted down pirates and fought against the remaining warlords, until peace inevitably returned to the galaxy. When peace did come, many of the squadron's pilots retired, ascending into legends. Even so, the squadron would continue, with new pilots upholding the unit's traditions across successive galactic governments and squadron commanders, each generation giving rise to new heroes and legends, adapting to, suffering heavy casualties, and eventually defeating the invading Yuuzhan'tar, standing against both the fearsome colony and the potential species side of said colony. The squadron would even survive the turbulence and confusing circumstances of the Second Galactic Civil War, which pitted present and former rogues against one another. Even some 100 years after they had flown against the Death Star, the fearless pilots of Rogue Squadron continued to fly against the darkness, flying against the forces of Darth Krayt's galactic empire, spark of hope in the hearts of the oppressed.